Hi guys, what is going on, and welcome back to another video on Conqueror's Blade. So we've actually just had announced a sort of a bit of a spotlight article on one of the 3 new units that we're going to be getting in Season 7, and it's kind of the Viking Shield Maidens, the female Viking warriors. And I thought, well, since we kind of be quite on top of the news for Season 7, I thought, well, we'll have a quick little video on it. Kind of take a little bit of a look at them, because there's a couple of interesting things in the article that caught my eye. As well as actually, I kind of was curious how they were going to make the Vikings look in this game, because they often go pretty fantasy-esque, and even though they've done that a little bit, I'm actually really pleased with how the units look from the footage so far. So yeah, so we can see some of the footage. I'll probably have it in the background now, rather than just playing the video directly. But there's a couple of interesting things. So firstly, they're a hybrid unit. We know they're going to be a tier 5, a top tier unit. And they're going to have 2 weapons. They're going to have a spear and a sword, along with obviously a shield. And they're going to be able to switch between the 2 of them. I guess this is a similar way to Iron Reapers have a sword and a flail. One does blunt damage, one does slashing damage. In reality, Iron Reapers tend to use the flail for most situations. So it may end up being a little bit like that you tend to really just use one over the other, but we'll kind of have to see. It also goes on to say spears will be inflicting debuffs on enemies, although it doesn't specify exactly what that is, and of course benefit from a longer reach. Well, it's a spear, that kind of goes as a given. They also say spear wielding, and when you've got the spear equipped, Shield Maidens are also especially effective against cavalry units. Okay, that's interesting. Does that suggest then that they're quite likely to have a brace function? Because realistically, from what we've experienced in the game, sort of says that unless you have a brace, you're really not going to be doing a lot against cavalry. Interesting to see how this brace pair pans out, how effective it's going to be against things like Hussars, how effective it's going to be against Liav Rangers. So we kind of need to know a little bit more about that, really want to get in on the testing. But initially, particularly for all those people saying they'd like to see more counters against cavalry, and myself included, I think adding in counters to cavalry is better than sort of directly nerfing cavalry. So I think it's good to be introducing counters. Kind of interesting to see that, and it means obviously you've got to have your spears equipped. I guess if you're in sword mode, then you're going to be getting flattened. So kind of going to be a little bit about that. They also say Shield Maidens can encircle their commanding warlord and move while holding formation. Well, that's almost certainly a cover commander is what they're describing there. Maybe it'll have a different name, kind of like the Sealer does. It's not called cover commander, but it's effectively the same thing. And I think we can assume that these Shield Maidens are going to be having a cover commander ability, which is nice to see. It also says, when using this ability, with spears equipped, the unit will maintain formation and defend, whereas equipping swords will make the Shield Maidens act more aggressively. That kind of sounds like a pain, doesn't it? If you think of Condottieri, if you put them within 50 meters of an enemy unit, and you turn your back on them, they end up wandering off to go and attack them. So it sounds like we may be getting a little bit of that sort of style of things. I suspect that depending on what the spears are like against other infantry units in combat, then I think spears are going to end up being the dominant sort of choice. Even though it's a hybrid unit, I think most of these things end up having one side being more meta than the other, rather than getting sort of completely 50-50 balanced. So I suspect we'll see the spears being more useful, but it kind of depends on what their damage output is going to be like when they get kind of into sword mode, and if that's going to be any more effective or not. So it's certainly an interesting unit. I think they look really great, and that's kind of one of the things I was really hoping for. They look kind of... well, it's the shields I really like. And so I'm pleased with how they implemented them into the game, because this is the first sort of proper footage we've had of any of the units, and I was kind of a bit apprehensive if I was going to be disappointed or not, but I'm not, so that's great. I think it's also great that they've considered introducing new counters to cavalry. Interesting to see how that's implemented. Personally, I'm assuming it's going to be through a brace function on their spear skill. Interesting to see what that is going to counter and how effective that is going to be. But certainly it seems like a step in the right direction. Anyway, I'll keep this video short. It was just a quick little look, because it was quite interesting that we'd actually got some footage and we'd actually seen a little bit of these units. So thanks for watching, guys. Any questions or comments, do put them down below. And of course, subscribe to the channel for lots more Conqueror's Blade content. Thanks, guys. I'll see you all on the next one.